The negative effect of psychological abuse on the child is measured to be more than physical abuse, more than sexual abuse, and more than physical plus sexual abuse.
In the Netherlands, parental alienation is defined as child abuse.
It has the most damaging effect on the development and mind of the child. And parental alienation ends up doing that damage to a child.
To engage in severe degree of alienating behaviors, you are so determined and you're so angry and you're so vengeful that it's an abnormal mental state.
There's a lot of research that points to the likely presence of personality disorders in parental alienation cases.
They're so stuck in their perception that they're the best parent in the world and the other parent is evil, that they would rather be stuck than make the changes to have the child come back to them.
You want to get a deep understanding of how the family communicates and what their sense of attachment is. And so you have to become immersed in family drama.
When I started my PhD in communication, I was not aware of alienation or that it had occurred in my life.
Before I knew it, I was resenting my dad and not wanting to go see him and obviously alienated from him, but that wasn't evident to me.
That indicates a developing level of psychopathology that we refer to as splitting.
Stripping someone of their intellectual identity, their emotional identity, their psychological identity.
So it's the end product of brainwashing a child to believe something bad about a person.
Cults go through, totalistic societies go through, and an alienating parent in their home, they're identical.
Because I knew from a young age there was something off with my family. There was something that just didn't feel right to me.
The fact that the alienation and the separation came so fast did shock me.
So Family Bridges is very educational.
Yeah, it was hard. So we were told that we couldn't see our mom for 90 days, and I remember the feeling. It was terrible. Like, I've never felt anything like that before.
Which had pros and cons. I mean, the children and I were able to continue to foster very strong relationships, but they also missed their mother.
We want the children to have a foundation of knowledge, of reliable, accurate, scientific knowledge.
Looking back, I couldn't be more thankful that that happened, and that's so incredibly hard to say because it is my mom and that's so hard. But without that, I wouldn't be where I am today.
This saved my life, helping restore the relationships that children should have with their parents, even if they're court-ordered.
Is this intervention necessary? The answer is that none of those 10 children have any relationship with their target parent. The 90 days is more than enough time for a parent whose genuine goal is to reunite with their children.
In many cases, however, they can't behave themselves even in a supervised setting.
We always ground our findings in the scientific research. So our reports will be heavily footnoted.
We're seeing a serious backfire effect among the anti-reunification therapy, anti-parental alienation, anti-brainwashing.
I almost felt that it was, taboo for me to use the term parental alienation. I was told by people, be careful, right?
Well, the biggest finding is there is no sufficient knowledge about how to recognize the signs of parental alienation. So it really needs to be into the basic curricula of education.
None of us who teach this would say that all children who refuse to see a parent are doing it because of parental alienation. But the critics of this theory claim that that's what we would say.
And they're dominated by confirmatory bias.
One of them is to make a false statement and to say it over and over and over again.
Remember that the tobacco industry spent decades pumping out crap science.
It's simply a lie to say that there are not professional organizations that endorse this idea.
Doctor's choice is a Chesterfield, you know, calms you down after a hard day's work.
These people quote each other, but they don't go back to the original sources, and they perpetuate this false statement. And I collected all these examples and I wrote this up.
The oil and gas industry did the same. We're facing the same thing with behavioral sciences about abusive parents in the courts.
It's a very serious problem because these people who we consider the parental alienation critics or detractors, they get a lot of mileage out of this.
Professor Harmon and I analyzed, tested every one of the conclusory statements that they made in this non-peer-reviewed internet published paper and demonstrated it's all false. It's false. It couldn't be substantiated. They still won't share their data.
That's a distortion of our theory.
We're starting to recognize the issue and starting to put the protections in place. And some people are obviously going to be upset by that.
When you bring science to court, you have lawyers and judges thinking one way with little or no science education, and scientists thinking another way with little or no legal education, and the languages don't correspond well.
Since 2011, there's quite a few high court cases which have cited parental alienation and had to deal with it in the absence of formal legislation. So governments are doing things around this, but I think the Irish approach and is quite strategic, and that's good. It's unfortunately slow when you start to do things that way at government level.
Science denial and the different techniques that people use to criticize scientific findings. It's a purposeful misinterpretation of parental alienation theory.
To try to explain to people, you got it wrong here. They don't want to see it. They don't want to know it. They don't want to hear it. And if you tell them any of this stuff, they redouble their efforts to say, you're wrong.
They think that the alienating parent's a protective parent, and then you have a child who's resisting and refusing because you have an unfit, dangerous parent. And that's bad math. And they're not identifying it because for them it's trigonometry and they've never been taught that.
That, oh no, the dads are just trying to cover up their violence by saying it's parental alienation. Au contraire, it's the alienators that are doing the violence.
We have lawlessness now. Perjury in our courtrooms is rampant with no consequences. Violation of court orders is rarely ruled on.
So now there is clear that the European Court of Human Rights is putting an obligation on states to positively intervene to protect families in these kind of situations.
We see an increase in the number of homicides with children.
There's no people without trauma. And how we're approaching that, how we're able to grow out of that and even integrate that experience and make it our, strength.
Figuring out ways for these alienated children, adult children's voices to be heard, I think it's something that is going to be a lifelong goal of mine.
It took all of me. It near broke me for sure many times over those 3 or 4 years of high conflict.
And that's where I come up with 5 common dilemmas or catch-22s. And it's this dilemma of never having a safe place as a targeted parent to know how to respond. But if it moves from moderate to severe, nothing a targeted parent does is going to stop it. And that's when, the resiliency is that you need help.
And I actually identified that family law is probably responsible for 25% of the crime in the United States.
She tried to file for a restraining order against John that day, which was denied.
And some of these restraining orders are issued based on false information.
There was an allegation of sexual abuse. There was and then the elders said, we don't need him, we don't love him, we don't want him. And those words I remember 25 years now. Very painful.
We look like child care centers. So many people are coming to the police station to exchange the children in a safe location.
And he shot him once in the chest, and as John turned to run, he shot him twice more in the back.
So that's one type of murder that is very sad, but it's associated with parental alienation.
We're talking about people you interact with every day, people who commit horrific crimes before they even get into court. So why are we making people pay hundreds of thousands of dollars? I have some millionaires that I've worked with that are devastated. They're broke. They're sleeping on people's couches. We're seeing mass shootings related to family law on a scale we never could have anticipated.
If they can manage the situation, it's not impossible that you can have successful visitation with a severely disordered parent.
And we're going to see increases in every aspect of crime if we don't start addressing these issues. And it starts with the simple act of enforcing court orders when it's at the easiest stage initially.
When scientists and therapists of good conscience remain quiet and don't say, no, that's wrong, the outcome is hurting children, children get hurt.
There are no winners and losers here between the mothers and fathers.
Our study demonstrates that two groups, similar in every way, one gets treatment, one doesn't. These are lost souls.